Take whichever seat you want, Coach.
What do you got? This good?
Yeah.
See here, Coach.
If I hand you a football to sign, then you can hand it to me, and then I'll.
How come I'm not signing the footballs?
We were going to have you sign golf balls.
Oh, okay.
Do you have yours
You're
on?
live, Coach. You don't have to touch
So
anything.
the
Am I-
biggest,
It's like the NFL.
It's on.
the biggest Dallas
There we go.
Cowboys fan in the world is Nikki Gatch. So she was super excited when I told her we were going to have Norv Turner. And this gives me an opportunity to also thank the section staff, Bryce for putting the book together, the team, and Nikki, all the effort that you put into this event. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. So my idea for this presentation, there's a lot of us in the industry that do more than just coach people how to golf. And I know that, we talk a lot about, you teach a lesson, but you're really a coach. But a lot of us also manage teams or work at a facility. We manage a lot of things. And so one of the things that I wanted to try to bring out of this was leadership and coaching and those types of things. And we'd like this to also be interactive. So if you have a question in the audience, please raise your hand. Obviously, I'm going to ask a few questions in the beginning, and we'll see where this goes. Andy and Pierce did such a great PowerPoint presentation. There is no PowerPoint presentation here. This is off the cuff and having fun asking questions. And I'd like to ask you, Coach Turner, first about who mentored you and how did you get into your career?
Yeah, that's, we're going way back. You want to start talking about mentoring and learning how to coach. I was fortunate to be involved with John Robinson as a young coach. And he was one of the great teachers at the college level and at the NFL level. And through Coach Robinson, I was able to meet John Madden I was at a very young age. He was still the coach at the Raiders. John Robinson and John Madden grew up together. They were best friends. And I got to spend a lot of time with Coach Madden through the years. And I thought you'd appreciate the stories, a couple stories about Coach Madden. But, his history as a NFL coach is incredible. He still has the highest won-loss percentage, and most of us, or a lot of us, I know my kids know him as a broadcaster. And when I first went to the Rams in the mid-'80s, like 1986, 1987, Madden was obviously the big name with CBS. They later went to Fox. And he was so much fun to be around, and I learned so much football from him. But the excitement of Madden was like when you came into the building on a Friday and the Madden cruiser was there sitting in the parking lot. You knew Madden was there. You knew they were doing it. It was a nationally televised game. And you knew you were going to have a hell of a practice because the players knew he was there. And they wanted to respond. They responded. They wanted him to say good things about them on Sunday. They wanted to be able to get on the Madden cruiser and talk to him after practice, whatever those things are. But it really was exciting, and it was new back then. But when I became a head coach, you'd have to meet with him, and then it was like either Saturday morning or Saturday night. If you were the home team, it was Saturday morning. If you're the visiting team, it was Saturday night. And I knew Madden and Summerall were coming in, and it was like, I gotta prep for this test because Madden knew a hell of a lot more about football than I did. And he was watching the same tape I was watching, and he was going to ask me questions about the New York Giants, the Washington Redskins, whoever we're playing. And it was hilarious because he'd come in and ask a question, and I knew he knew. He knew the answer that he was asking, and I'm sitting there going, okay, I better get this right, or he's going to think I'm a dumbass. And I knew him well, so I actually said that to him one day. Hell, I feel like I'm taking the test, Coach. This is every time you come in. But he had a great ability to prepare during the week, watch two teams, and Sunday, that's why he was so good. He knew what was going to happen before it happened. And he really did an unbelievable job in preparation. And I think I always tell people, you know, that's the key to being good. The preparation you put in obviously has a lot to do with your performance. And he was great at it. So John Robinson and John Madden, those two guys had a great impact on me at a young age.
David, grew up in Connecticut, was actually a sales rep for TaylorMade in the Northeast, made your way to the West Coast and CEO of TaylorMade for multiple years. Like, how did you pick golf, and how did you get from there to here, and who mentored you, and how did that come about?
Yeah. How much time do we have, Coxie? That's a long question. First of all, you know what I just realized? That between Coach and I, we both have one Super Bowl ring combined. Coach, shine that thing up for everybody else there. As Coach is talking, the hand's waving, and I've just got to keep dodging this big, massive, gold diamond-plated everything. That's pretty awesome, Coach.
Well, Marlon's back there, and he's still waiting for the Cowboys to get their next one because they haven't in about 35 years.
So raw subject after yesterday, Coach. I think they might need you back on the sideline. Okay, can we get back on track, Coxie? Get control of your audience, will you? I'm incredibly fortunate. So this is a bit of a crazy story, and I'll paraphrase most of it. My father's a PhD in physics and biochemistry, and my mother was a clinical psychologist. And what came out of that was a golf club salesman. Go think about that. So my father's a who's who in modern science. He solved the reentry theory. Anybody know what that is? The entry theory is when you get a ballistic missile out of the atmosphere, how do you get it back in without burning up? So if you send an astronaut into space, and you want to bring them back in, there's so much air friction coming back in that ultimately you'll burn up a capsule unless you can find the right angle of descent, the right materials management to ultimately form a utility to bring them back alive. That was my father's team. He led that team to ensure that we can get astronauts back. So I grew up around the table with astronauts and scientists from Story Musgrave to Buzz Aldrin to Bob Ballard, who found the Titanic, if any of you are oceanographic students. It was an amazing childhood growing up, but he was a scientist and is a scientist today at 95 years old, and everything, Shawn, had to be fact-based with him. If you really engage with a pure scientist, there's no EQ in this. If it can't be proven by data source, if there isn't technology that can prove out what you're doing, then ultimately it's not real science. It can't just be intuition. My mother's on the opposite end of the spectrum. She's a clinical psychologist, so everything's intuitive. Everything's a soft skill. Everything is uniquely different based on a human interaction, a relationship quality that leads you down a path that ultimately can help you solve something in her profession. So I don't really know how I came out a golf club salesman from that upbringing, but I do remember my father even to this day, and if you were here in this room, I would share this with you. I remember him saying to me at a young age, I was an avid and competitive basketball player and golfer. I went up to the University of Connecticut to play basketball for one of my heroes, Coach Jim Calhoun. And I walked on and unfortunately realized very clearly my best pathway is to play golf, not basketball. At 6'1" and a good shooter with a good head and no athleticism, wasn't going to play very well in the Big East and certainly for that team. So anyway, I pursued the game of golf because I love the game of golf, and I was working in golf shops, both on course and off course, to pay some bills through high school and college, and fell in love with the business of golf. And while I had my personal passion was to pursue a career in sport and subsequently golf, I continued to lean back on what my father used to say to me. He said, if you can make your passion your vocation, so if you can do what you want professionally and love what you do, then you'll have a wonderful career. You'll lean in, and every day will be filled with wonderful events and care and consideration for the things that matter most to you, and you can add value professionally. And so I followed that mentorship from my father to the T, which is I got out of school, I had a degree in finance and marketing, I was heading down to Wall Street to trade, and I got an opportunity to become a sales rep. And I worked my way into TaylorMade, which was amazing. I started in the Met section. I don't know if any of you are from New York originally or have been in the Met section, a couple of you. tough section, right? Tough golf professionals, great players, great teachers, great mentors. And I learned my trade, cutting my teeth, doing my work. So I got started in the business at TaylorMade and was incredibly fortunate to meet a lot of successful salesmen and sales managers at the time. But I always really aspired to do more than just selling golf clubs and to build a more comprehensive professional portfolio and doing things that ultimately would lead me to the dream job that I'm in right now and have been in for 10 years. And I did have a mentor along the way that really kind of kicked my career into overdrive. And it's ironic, he's 10 years older than I am, so he's in his early 60s right now. You'll know his name when I share it with you, because he and I, as much as we care for each other and still stay connected with each other, we vehemently disagree on almost every major technical issue now in the world of golf. His name is Mike Wan, he's the head of the USGA. And so you can imagine, so Mike, in the late 90s, you may not know this, was the general manager of North America for TaylorMade Golf, the same role that Steve Hendren, who I think addressed you first thing this morning, was in. And so Mike was running North America sales and marketing for TaylorMade. I was a sales rep back east, and Mike would come out and work with me a little bit here and there. And clearly he saw something that inspired him to say, would you consider coming out to Southern California and start your career in management? I said, sure. He says, well, there's a catch to this. I said, what's the catch? He says, well, you're going to make half as much money and you're going to work twice as hard. And clearly, my father's influence wore off on me. I raised my hand and said, how quickly can I start doing that? So I come to Southern California to make half as much money and work twice as hard in my first role in management. My role and my title was Manager of Business Development. Anyone ever had a title like that before? A couple of you, yeah. It's a great title. When things are going well, you're gainfully employed. When things aren't going well, it's the first role to leave. But I decided to leap in because I realized through Mike that if I wanted to have a broader impact on the company and ultimately my career, that it would have to become more about our people than it was myself. And when you're out in the field, and many of you work with sales reps, talented salesmen from TaylorMade and other companies, those jobs are individual contributor roles. They contribute to their customer, they contribute to their customer's customer, your golfers, but ultimately they're accountable to delivering what's right for them, and that should ladder up to the needs of the company. But it's an individual role. And that was the biggest transition for me. So Mike started to mentor me on the difference between individual contribution and team management, which then ultimately evolved into team leadership. And those are two very different things. Management and leadership. Management is very tactical. Leadership is very strategic and environmental. And we can talk about that at length if you want as well. But Mike's influence on me was very profound. He was the one that gave me a chance, believed in me, and then started to build foundationally the things that I would lean on and continue to lean on to help me do this job. And it's interesting because I find myself on the other side of the table now arguing against technology, meaning TaylorMade's for technology. We're a pro-technology company. We believe in innovation. We believe things should go further and faster. And Mike has a differing viewpoint on that right now. So it's interesting to actually be on opposing sides with your mentor from time to time in and around tables and decisions, a table with the right people and decisions that ultimately determine the outcome of this game over time.
Yeah.
That ties into kind of like adapting to change. Coach, you coached for 40 plus years, like football evolved. How did you continue to innovate? How did that go about?
Well, it's a little bit like that scene from Ted Lasso where he's throwing the darts and beats. You guys watch Ted Lasso, I'm sure. And he says, I learned to be curious. And you have to be curious about what you're doing. You have to be curious about how you're going to grow, how you're going to get better. And in our business, nowadays, everything's on video. Back then, it was on the beta tapes. I used to stay after, or leave, when the coaches had left, I'd stay after, break down all 49er film, all Miami Dolphin film. Well, there's a reason. It was Montana, it was Marino. And just look at what people are doing. And that's one of the things every year when the season ended, you go back and look at the teams that were best in all these different situations. And you keep growing and you put that together and provide that for your players. The one thing I've learned through time is everyone's not good at everything. So evaluate your ability to evaluate your players, your coaching staff, your support group, and put them in a place to do the things they do best. And that's what Troy was talking about. Sometimes players don't want to hear it. I'm sure sometimes you're teaching golfers, they don't want to hear it. That's really not good for you. We're not going to run you're not going to run this route because you don't run it very good. We got 3 guys that run it better. We'll find the things you do best and we'll let them do that. So I think I've learned that over time, and everyone has a chance to contribute when you do that.
David, your company TaylorMade has been rated by Newsweek top 100 companies to work for the last 3 years. What have you done at TaylorMade to create that type of work environment?
Yeah, no, Coxie, thank you for acknowledging that. I was doing an interview with Golf Digest just a couple of months ago, and it was with their technology writers, their editorial staff on equipment. And they asked me, of all the technologies over 45 years, TaylorMade was founded in 1979. Of all the technical innovations over those 45 years, what are you most proud of? And so you stop for a minute, you take inventory. Not that TaylorMade's the only company that has brought new technology to market. There's a lot of great brands in the space. There's a lot of new technology. I'd like to think that most of the technology in modern form started at TaylorMade, from movable weight technology to flight control, to ultra-thin cast titanium, to thermally compressed carbon, to track technology, and I can go on and on to 10K, all the different things that we work so hard to deliver. So I stopped for a moment and said, what's the greatest innovation we've actually ever delivered at TaylorMade? And it's really been the innovative quality of our people. Because innovation has become too much of a buzzword in our industry and every other industry in the world today, right? Everybody's a profound innovator, but the fact of the matter is, most companies can't innovate because they're not willing to take the risk in doing so. And think about your roles as teachers or golf professionals and bringing a new concept forward that either you thought of or you're refining another concept that hasn't proven to work yet with your student or your customer. Think about bringing a technology to market that hasn't yet been proven by the world's greatest players, a couple of them that are kind of on boards around the room here, that hasn't been validated at the highest level yet and brought to marketplace. To truly be an innovator, you have to take on risk and you have to be willing to fail. And so back to this interview, I said, what's so uniquely different about our company, and many of you who know our company well, and thank you for being such great customers of ours for so many years. And if you haven't really spent much time with TaylorMade, I would encourage you at any time, call me or come on up to our world headquarters and experience this unique culture that we have created of innovation. What's so unique about our culture is we're willing to lean in and take on risks where most others don't. And so we hire around that. When we go through recruiting, regardless of discipline in the organization, innovation doesn't only exist in R&D or product creation or our marketing functions or our sales functions. It exists in our HR functions, our finance functions. Innovation exists throughout the organization. And so 3 years ago, Newsweek called and said, hey, we've heard a lot about what you're doing at TaylorMade. We understand that your growth trajectory has been very, very strong. We understand that you're gaining market share. You're global in nature. Unfortunately, I came in a little bit late and I didn't get a chance to listen to Andy and Pierce talk about social development and YouTube channels and all their social media capabilities. You may not know this. There's only one entity in the world of golf right now that has a larger audience than TaylorMade Golf. Anyone know who that is? The PGA Tour. Only one entity. And that was an innovative thread that had nothing to do with product. It had to do with how can we be compelling in front of golfers of all skill levels to tell our messages to inspire them to come to you to get instruction, get fit into golf clubs, or ultimately lean in on our brand. So when you walk through the halls of TaylorMade, regardless of function or department that you walk into, every individual was hired under the premise of how can you create something new that doesn't already exist? And within that environment, you have to be willing to, as a leader, whether you're in my role or members of my executive team role, be willing to listen to new ideas that may be different from yesterday's. And quite frankly, I think this is, as relevant to you as it is to our company, which is how do you think about a new pathway, a new concept, something in form or function that could ultimately help your students improve just a bit better. Whether it's how you communicate, whether it's the technical approach that you take to instruction, club fitting, or merchandising, whether it's how you lead your teams within your club. But what's the red thread that's going to tie all of you together? And the red thread at TaylorMade is very clear. We're a performance-driven, results-oriented organization. That's what we are. If you cornered me in an elevator and said, describe the corporate culture at TaylorMade, I wouldn't tell you we're the most innovative company in the world. We're one of them. We're a performance-driven, results-oriented organization, which means we find solutions to opportunities and challenges all day, every day. And that's what defines the company. We hire around that. We train around that. We retain our people around that. We develop, we coach, we mentor around that. And for 3 consecutive years, humbly, we've been recognized for that. And so back to that interview, what's the most important innovation that TaylorMade's had in its 45 years? I would tell you unequivocally, bar none, it's been our ability to engage our teams and our people to think differently, to lean forward, to create, to ideate, and create an environment that is very fast and very exciting that ultimately will yield better results. And as a net result, we were recognized for that. And I'm very, very proud of that. So that's the thing that I'm most proud of at TaylorMade. As good as our products are and as great as our world number ones are, they're exceptional. It's the people at TaylorMade, many of whom are here today in the back room, that define the success of the company and define our brand. And I'm proud of them. And that's why we were named Newsweek Top 100 for 3 consecutive years.
So cool.
Thank you.
Coach, you've developed a lot of coaches under you, players under you. What are some of the stuff that techniques, what types of things do you do to develop people?
The biggest thing, and I'll talk about players first, and you could say maybe over the last 10 years, but I go back forever when I think of young players coming in. The first thing you have to do, and people don't appreciate it, I appreciate listening to Troy, you have to teach them that this is a different level, that this is a full-time job. It's a 10-hour-a-day job, 5 days a week to prepare for a Sunday performance. And it's a total commitment that's a lot different than most young guys have experienced. And to me, it's your coach's understanding that you're dealing with 21, 22, 23-year-old guys that aren't used to getting out of bed early in the morning. They're not used to making a breakfast, doing those type of things. And you have to spend time with them on a personal level continuously to let them get to a point where they can go perform at a high level consistently. And there's a few things we always tell them at the beginning. Number one, you have to be coachable. And this obviously, we're all teachers in here. I would share it with anyone who's teaching a golfer, because I know guys that are coachable and guys that aren't. Be engaged. And it's hard. Some of these guys, they were up playing video games till 2 a.m, and that meeting's gone an hour, and they're kind of, hey, be engaged. Do whatever I have to do to make sure you're getting the most out of every teaching opportunity, every situation you're in. This is important because I don't care if it's a young guy, an older guy, I don't care if it's an assistant coach you're correcting or teaching. Don't be sensitive. I'm not a very good golfer, but I like to play and I like to learn and like to try to get better. And if every time someone tried to correct you or tell you, oh, no, you got to do this, and you're sensitive about it, you're not going to go anywhere. And it goes along the same thing. Don't be defensive. Don't be defensive. You're asking to take a lesson. I'm coaching the guy. You want to get better? You want to be the best you can be? Then, don't be defensive. We've coached a lot of guys. I've been lucky. I could start listing guys now that had their best career year with me and have gone other places and just struggled. So if you convince them, hey, this is going to help you be better, and this is going to help you be the best you can be, then you can coach them hard. And we all need to be coached hard at times. Probably the most important one for coaches, number one, coaches, people see stuff on tape and they want to run it. They want to come up with some crazy play, something. We all see it and go, what were they thinking when they ran that? Players, don't get bored. Don't get bored. Because it's easy to get bored with this simple thing. Whether we're talking putting, we're hitting our wedge, going out and practicing hitting a driver. The great story I have with Troy Aikman, I'd stand behind him, and this guy, Madden and Summerall, declared him the most accurate passer they had ever seen when he was in his prime, and he was. But I'd stand behind him. We'd run a famous bang 8 skinny post, and he'd go back there, and he'd have 5 or 6 different receivers running the route. He didn't care who it was. He'd go back there, I'd stand behind him and watch him and just bang right between the numbers, bang right between the numbers. And I thought, he'd hit 10 in a row. Just drop, bang, get back, drop. And I go, that must be boring to be that good. And then it hit me, and I've used this ever since. The reason he's that good, because he doesn't get bored. It's the same every time. It's Tiger Woods hitting 200 4-foot putts after a round. Don't get bored with the simple things, and then you become really, really good at them.
That's great. And you've talked a lot about playing to people's strengths, and that, to me, in conversations we've had where certain coaches can't adapt to the talent that they have, and that stuck with me. It's not a question to you, but that is always, and as I'm working with my team at my club, I'm trying to put everybody in the right position because they have certain talents or they do certain things, and it's always stuck with me, Coach, those comments.
Well, he knows most of my coaching points and all that because I'd take lessons from Shawn, and we'd go up there in a 45-minute lesson. I might hit 5 balls because we're talking quarterback play, we're talking best teams, we're talking fantasy, we're talking this. He's swinging, and I'm talking, and we're getting football squared away. My golf swing hasn't gotten any better, but we had a lot of fun talking ball.
I had the privilege of taking Norv, never been to the Masters, so we went for Norv's 70th birthday with his 2 sons and one of his best friends, and we walked around all day Sunday, and we finally got to our seats on 18, and when we sat down, as we were sitting down, Rory McIlroy made his bunker shot a couple years ago, and then Cole Morikawa made one like 15 seconds later, so that was pretty cool. That was priceless, Coach.
Both with MG2 wedges, if anyone was paying attention.
So, David, coaching your team at TaylorMade, do you do it all yourself? Do you bring in some heavy companies that help with that type of thing? How do you coach a team like that's doing that kind of business?
Yeah. I certainly, the short answer is I certainly cannot do it all myself. We have 2,200 people around the world now. And so, if we come back to we're all aligned to the appropriate brand values and principles, I think Steve may have talked about that a little bit this morning. And that we hire for talent, creativity, and innovative concepts. It's hard to do that as one person, across a spectrum of people around the world. My role is to set the tone and the environment to enable our people to do that, but we have a dedicated group internally, function through our HR group, that works on coaching and development literally every day, 365 days a year. We have programs, multiple levels, taking entry-level employees to mid-level employees, mid-level managers to leaders to executives, and we invest behind it. So again, it comes back to, are you willing to do the work, Coach? Right? You've got to actually do the work. You can't talk about a concept and not act upon it. So we have internal resources that really focus on mentorship. We have a coaching platform in the organization, not coaching in the construct of how Troy can get better, but coaching in the construct how our people can get better and how we build really valued trust between employee and manager, employee and leader, and ultimately unpack, what's real in a relationship in an effort to advance it. And that's one of the things I've learned, and I think, Coach, you're touching on this directly, that whether you talk about mentorship, being a mentor or a mentee, you talk about coaching, at the end of the day, those are relationships. And they can't be a one-way thing. As a coach, if you're on the lesson tee with somebody and your student is willing to receive coaching or acknowledge that you're working to improve his or her skill set, the likelihood of success is what? Unlikely, right? So every relationship is uniquely different as they are. They matter. So fundamentally within our organization, both insourcing and outsourcing, I'll get to the outsource piece, we focus on how to build relational equity in a coaching environment or a mentorship environment or a mentee environment. And that's critically important. And that starts with self-awareness, right? How many of you have taught somebody that has zero self-awareness around where their golf game is right now? Looks like everybody. How many of you have taught somebody that prior to you engaging with them, and whether you're a teacher, whether you're managing a shop, managing a staff, or coaching, has complete 100% self-awareness of their game? None of you, right? So we always start with the fundamental premise is that the only way to be truly effective as a coach or a mentor is that if you develop a relationship that unpacks the highest level of self-awareness and identifying ultimately what you want to deliver against and what is important to you and what your true north looks like, that's the way you get there. So before you can even get on the lesson tee, you need to define what that is. You need to build foundational equity that you're going to build self-awareness with each other, and that's built on trust and transparency in how you work together. So I can think about hundreds of employees that have had aspirations in our organization to take on new roles. I'm sure you can think about hundreds of your students that have said, I've come here, Coach, because I want to be a better player. And so the starting point for us is, okay, well, what does that look like for you? Are you willing to put the work in? And what is your level of self-awareness relative to your current state against what you want your future state to be? And before we even start, we have to unpack that. And I would suggest you do that with all your students, with your staff, and anything is, what are your objectives? And are you willing to understand where you are completely so that you can get to where you want to go? And that typically is what breaks down in most mentorship relationships, most coaching relationships, is early on in that relationship, there is an establishment of where we currently are. Take inventory of what you are and how self-aware you are of those characteristics. So back to your question, Shawn, we do that. We're not perfect at it. Nobody is, but we work on that in our coaching relationships internally. We work on that in our development programs internally. We bring outside leaders in that ultimately share their experiences in coaching and leadership, much like we're doing right now. Credit to you, Shawn. I mean, I'm sure everything you're working on over the next 2 days is valuable to what you do every day. But I can honestly tell you there's nothing more valuable between teacher and student, mentor and mentee, coach and pupil, to get really level set up front where everybody's awareness is and what your objectives are. Because if you don't get there, you're never going to find true north and you're never going to optimize the performance in that relationship. And I can see many of you saying, yeah, I got it. I'm sure you can think of one student, if not many, that you started with and said, where are we right now? How aware are you of your game right now? Different facets of the game, how you think about your game, physically, how you approach the game, technically, how you think about the game. Where are you right now? And ultimately, where do you want to go? The coaching starts after that conversation, because then you start to build the plan and buy into the plan and do the work to ultimately get to what that looks like. And that's what we do at TaylorMade. And again, this isn't a perfect craft. Nobody perfects this. And that's the beautiful thing about running a company, which is you're constantly finding areas of improvement for the things that you've done, the same way you do with relationships and your coaching and your mentoring and certainly in your management.
Coach, I'm sure you can expand on that a little bit.
Well, no question. I sum it up real easily. Know who you are. That's the first thing we sit down with these guys. Hey, know who you are, and then where do you want to get to? And that's a hard one. That's where those don't be defensive, don't be sensitive, because when I sit down with someone, my wife's telling me who I am, I get defensive and sensitive.
You're not the only one,
You
Coach.
sit down with a player and you tell him, and you're honest, here's the things you need to do to get to where you want to be. Here's where you're at now. You want to be this guy. Here's what you have to do. And it's the hard conversations, but the guys that respond to it, it's unbelievable how well they can do. We brought a receiver in from Maryland when I was in Carolina, DJ Moore, who, speaking of know who you are, Dave Tepper thinks he's a football guy. He should know he's
an investor.
A moneymaker, not a coach. But they traded DJ Moore away. But DJ Moore did an interview after he had a big game, and they asked him, who is there one guy who's really affected your career? And he mentioned me because he says he was relentless. He wore me out. He made me run and run again and go faster and faster and faster. And DJ Moore was a little bit of a glider with great speed, and he needed to learn how to use his speed. And you'd show him tape, and the way I created where I got him to understand he wasn't running full speed, he'd be running a route, and he'd catch the ball, and you'd see an instant acceleration. I said, DJ, are you running faster now than you were before you caught the ball? Yes. I said, well, we need you to do that as you're running the route. And he laughed about it when in the interview. He says, he just wore me out. He convinced me that this is the way to do things. So, I think guys that buy into what you're telling them, and if you have a track record and can show them that this is going to help you be better, if they respond, you get great results.
Shawn, it's amazing, Coach. You inspired me by sharing that story. And I'm looking at Tiger and Nelly and Brooke. I think that's Brooke over there in the corner, and Scotty, and Rory's not. We get asked from time to time, how did all these incredible athletes end up at TaylorMade? And so if you're on the outside looking in, you'd say, well, TaylorMade must pay them more than others. That's actually not the case. When we work with athletes, before we even sign an agreement with an athlete, we have to be aligned in our values. And if we're not aligned in our values, I can't tell you how many conversations we've had with athletes that are prolific athletes in the game of golf that wanted to play our equipment, play our golf ball, that just didn't meet our brand criteria. So I think Steve may have mentioned this first thing this morning. We have 4 basic values in the organization. Number 1, we're original, right? The things we do focus on the originality of who we are, and that's important to us. We're relatable, right? We hope to be more relatable every day to golfers of all skill levels. We're competitive as can be, and then we made up a value in our organization called Golftomistic, which is if you're not an optimistic golfer, you can't come into the organization. So I look at the relationship we started with Tiger in 2017, sat down with him in Jupiter, Florida, saying, these are the things that matter to us. Do they matter to you? And he lit up on the other side of the table. And here we are 7 years later. Not only he's been playing our products, but we're involved with him in multiple businesses from PopStroke to Sunday Red because our values are aligned. And I'll tell you what, of all the athletes I've ever met, and Scotty's not too far behind him, there is nobody willing to learn more and develop more every day and put the work in than him. And I think that's what inspired him to be at TaylorMade. It wasn't that he knew we had great technology and our next driver, or that ultimately, we'd build the right grind in his wedge. It was that he knew that collectively we shared the same values. We would do the work to find better pathways to improve. And if you really listen to him, over the years, in his prime, where he is today, where he's going in the future, he's on this constant quest to improve. Same way Scotty is. Scotty's just a bit more humble, he's a bit more grounded. Perhaps he doesn't have the same shine as Tiger does, given the length of his career and what he's done. Every time I meet with Scotty, and our guys are meeting with him right now in Dallas, he's asking the same questions. How can I get better through the use of better technology? Help me understand how it works. And ultimately, can it help me improve? And if it does, he leans in, he does it. If we can't answer those questions, then we don't do it. And so it's a fascinating process as you think about how you engage your students. If you're truly aligned in your values and an aspiration to improve, and I know you are, if your students are, magical things can happen and you end up with great students or great staff or great equipment or great teams, and things tend to, find success a little bit easier when you get there.
I think Nikki's trying to get me for a text message. We need to take a question from the audience because I've got a gift for somebody willing to, right here.
So you're sitting with a young athlete and you ask them, Coach, how good do you want to be? What do you want to do? They almost always leave with the same answer. I want to be the best there is. And some of them you might look at it and say, yeah, this kid has a lot of upside potential. Otherwise, it's not so much. So how would you negotiate those waters with a teenager, 13 through 16?
It's been a long time since I coached a 13 to 16-year-old. I think of me playing golf, and the number one thing I like about going out and playing golf is the mental side of it. I love the watching these guys play, thinking through the game. Where do I want to hit my second shot from? I'm not going to get on the green in two, but where do I want to leave it so I can chip and maybe get close enough to get a par? That type of thing. And I think with young kids, teaching them the game, I guess a young quarterback, teaching them the game, how to go about playing, a young golfer, everyone wants to hit it further than they can. Everyone wants to, make a 30-foot putt, all those things. But I think the value of teaching at all levels is understanding the mental part of the game. And, I know with a young quarterback, if he ever throws a ball, I'm talking about the ball flight, your release. Most of these young guys throw the ball way too hard, teaching them how to change it up like you would, like a golfer, the ball flight. And then, I've gone through it. My kids are in their 30s, and my oldest son is a coach with the Raiders. And we all have aspirations. They had aspirations of being really good players. They were good players. They weren't really good, but they learned how to get enjoyment out of the game, and that would be the number one thing. And you can't say that to a guy, hey, you got to get enjoyment out of the game, but you can teach them to get enjoyment out of the game. That's the way I'd approach it.
Well said, Coach, while you sign that, just a thought. I get that question quite frequently with employees, right? What's your aspiration? Hey, David, I want your job. Love the aspiration. How about we start with you being the best version of yourself? How about we identify within yourself how you can really materially improve given your skill set, how you choose to address your business attitudinally, and then subsequently how much work you're willing to put in. And I can imagine, Coach, like every player that comes in the NFL says, I'm going to be the best that's ever played in this position. And I'm not so sure that really is ultimately the aspiration. The aspiration as a coach is, how do I leverage every ounce of talent, skill, capability in an individual's willingness to put into work to have him or her become the best version of himself? It goes back to self-awareness, because if you're actually working to be the best version of who you are and whatever you choose to do, that'll ultimately dictate how far you go. And it's amazing how goal setting, as important as it is, sometimes it gets clouded by these aspirational thoughts, which are really, really good, but not necessarily correlated to precisely who you are as an individual. And I get that question all the time. I want to be the best version of this position. Well, how about starting with the best version of who you are and aspiring to benchmark yourself against yourself before you actually have to put yourself up against Tom Brady?
Here we go.
Oh, careful. Oh, jeez.
Clearly,
Come on, you're supposed to catch that.
clearly a tight end.
Again, what David said, I'll break it down a little simpler. I've stood in front of groups, a lot of groups of players or whatever, and coaches, sat in a staff meeting with
It's for you,
15,
Roger.
18 coaches, and when the season starts, all 32 teams are going to the Super Bowl. All 32 teams are going to win 12 games. We know we can go on and on. That's not a reality. I said, hey, listen, guys, coaches, players, we know what we ultimately want to do. We want to go win a championship. We want to get a ring. We want to do these things. But let me give you some advice to start here. When we get going, you want to be the best version of yourself. You want to be a guy that everyone's depending on, and it was up here on the board a little bit, that people know who you are and they feel like they can't get by without you. And ultimately, you want to make sure when this thing's done, the season, you have a job. And that hits home. We all want to win a championship, but you better make sure you have a job. And if you do that every year, you end up having a 12-year career. You do that every year as a coach, you end up growing and end up having really good things happen for you.
So on that note, Coach and Mr. Abeles, what would you say you use to fill a player or a person's emotional tank where they've had a bad week, it's gone down, and now you got to pump them back up? And what do you use as one of your motivators in that process?
Take that first, Coach. You want me to?
Yeah. Well, usually, if you're talking about a guy or that, it's usually shared, and we're a team sport, and it's shared. So it's obviously you can address it as a group, but then individually, to me, it's let's look at this. What was the reason for this poor performance? Was it you were in the game for 36 plays? Was it 20 plays that were bad, or was it 4 really bad plays? And let's address why the performance wasn't what we wanted, and then as you address it, how are we going to fix it? What do we have to do to fix it? Is it the way you ran a route? Is it the way you pulled and ran by an unblocked guy? Whatever those situations are. And then I think that's what I'm saying, guys, don't be sensitive, be aware, and let's, be coachable.
It's a great question, right? Because I think all of us in our professional roles will deal with an individual that has a rough day, a rough week, needs to have their emotional tank filled with some energy to find some optimism in what they're doing. Welcome to life, right? Professionally or personally. What we tend to do at our company, and I tend to do personally when we're in a situation like that, is one, go back to the objective of what we're trying to accomplish. So if you're a teacher, you're trying to be a better player, and what kind of player are you trying to be? All right, let's start there. So we anchor ourselves in objectively what we're trying to accomplish. I tend to lean into, well, let's focus on the things that you actually have accomplished to this point. Let's focus on how difficult this week got, but what you actually did do to improve this week, and learn from that. And then acknowledge the areas of opportunity that perhaps created this emotion of, darn it, I had a rough week, I feel like I haven't made progress. The fact that the individual is acknowledging that in itself would lead you to believe that she or she is inspired to actually keep going, right? So we tend to lean in on, all right, let's focus on where we are making progress first. Fill your tank up with that. As an inspiration point to recognize that if you didn't get as far as you want, let's identify why, but let's also identify that's part of the process. Right? Nothing good comes without some pain points. No progress ever happens, no material progress ever happens in anything you do without a struggle somewhere along the way. I've never met a successful individual that has achieved great things or set goals and achieved those goals that didn't have setbacks along the way. So if you can't embrace the process, going back to self-awareness, if you can't embrace the process that, going from an individual that likes to draw the ball, but I'm cutting it as of late, and I want to get back to drawing it because I'm not hitting it as far. Well, what did we do this week to advance your golf swing, to begin to put you in a situation where you can draw it? And what are the things that we didn't get to this week that you want to work on again tomorrow to advance it moving forward? But we always lead with, what are we doing that is working? And then back into what are the challenges you face, so we can fill your tank up not only with the good things, but the motivation to move forward in the things that haven't worked. You're not alone. We all deal with it every day. And a lot of that is environmental, and a lot of that, in fact, all of that starts with your leadership. You know, what is your attitude in approaching that situation? Well, I'm sorry you had a really shitty week, too bad for you. Or is it, hey, I get that. Isn't it great that we can have some bad weeks mixed in with the good ones? Let's talk about the things we did well this week, the things that you're concerned about, and then ultimately work on those things next week so that when we have this conversation 7 days from now, you're going to feel even better than you do today. The individual walking out of that room is going to be a completely different human being than if it's solely about acknowledging that's not what's not working. There's not a whole lot of productivity in that, right?
So the reason I threw that one was because it's all this synthetic stuff. It's not a real ball. Andy.
My question is around work ethic and hunger. How much do you, there's certain levels of work ethic, how much do you believe that you can train work ethic and hunger in culture and environment? Or do you feel that you've either just got that in you or you haven't?
Yeah. Me, Andy, or Coach, either of us?
Right, yeah.
I'll give you a break. I'll lead in on that
Okay,
one.
good.
Yeah, that's a terrific question. In fact, I think there was a quote that came out inside baseball here, or inside golf. Tiger tends to respond to certain interview questions the same way. Jason Day was being interviewed on a podcast somewhere, I think it was last week. I caught pieces of this, and they were talking about Tiger's greatness and how long he was #1 player in the world and all those amazing things, the major championships. And Tiger made a comment to Jason. He says, you know, if I had your talent, I would have been #1 a lot longer. The only reason I was able to do it because I leaned in and I worked harder. You know, the whole John Daly story, right? You know, if I had your talent and my work ethic, I'd be significantly better than I am today. We hire around that at TaylorMade, which is we want to validate and qualify that an individual is willing to lean in and do the work and be hungry around doing that work. And you try to get that as right as you can, as frequently as you can. But at times you find individuals that may want to do the work, but they're uncertain as to, you know, what the pathway is for them to get on to do it. That's a coach's responsibility to kind of map that plan out once you define ultimately what the objective is. And the other thing is to create an environment. And I see this when I'm coached by you two guys, right? Where we played 9 holes several months ago and I hit it really poorly and said, hey, how do you feel about coming on the practice tee and hitting a few shots? We can get this fixed pretty quickly. And I've got these two superstars working with a broken down 52-year-old trying to figure out his golf swing and get it right. I left inspired. I was willing to put the work in, but you inspired me to do the work because you created an environment, you created a platform for me to want to do it. And so there are a lot of people that don't know how hungry they are until their coach enables them to actually trigger that hunger. And it always starts with the simple notion of, do you desire to improve? Do you desire to get better? And my guess is, in all of your experiences out there, every student or every member of your team that you would have asked that question of, the answer is what? Yes. If you have an individual that says, ask the question, do you inspire to get better? And they say no, then I would strongly encourage you to move off of that individual, coach somebody else, or hire somebody else. But when you create an environment, that accountability to inspire somebody to find their momentum, to find their hunger, to find their passion, to pursue their greatness. Sometimes it's innate and you're born with it, and sometimes you're born with it, but you're not sure how to extract it. And that's where coaching and leadership comes in. Create an environment that enables the individual to anchor in toward improvement, and ultimately you do the job in a very inspirational way, in a very motivating way, by focusing on the positives and the areas of improvement. And what I love about Coach, every time I say something, he comes back and says, let me simplify that. The greatest coaches are the ones that simplify some complexity, and they create an environment that enable an individual to lean in and move forward. You're spot on, Andy. You know, you got to find that hunger in students some way. It exists in almost all of us, but sometimes it's our role to pull it out. And that's not an easy thing to do, but it is our job.
For us, you know, we have a roster of 53, and it can go anywhere from 21 years old to 40 years old. You know, there's a wide range. And usually it's the young players that need a mentor. And if you have a nucleus of guys like we had when I was with the Chargers, like we had when I was in Dallas, they either have to keep up or get out. I mean, Michael Irvin, Alvin Harper will tell you, Michael Irvin tried to kill me on the field, not literally. Michael pushed Alvin Harper and made him a good player because Alvin would have, he might have gone home during the first training camp. And Michael Irvin was the hardest working player, or one of the top 10 hardest working players I've ever been with. And he would take a deep breath and go out and get lined up and go run 100 miles an hour as fast as he could every single route. And Alvin would come off the ball about half speed, and I'd stop the tape at Michael would be at 15 yards and Alvin would be at 10. And said, Alvin, you're faster than Mike. This ain't going to get it. And then Mike would grab Alvin. So having that group, they call it culture now. They didn't call it culture when I was growing up. I don't know where it came from. But it's a group of guys that provide that leadership that we're talking about. And they provide that level of excellence that the young guys, they learn to emulate. And it's hard for them sometimes, but in time it happens.
That actually, I'm sure everybody in the room here has the ESPN app, and they do those little short video clips. And a couple days ago, they had some of the NFL kind of commentator guys on there, and one of the former players of the NFL said that the coach creates the vision, but the players set the culture. And it ties into what you just said there. Tom Brady set the culture. Belichick set the vision. And I'd never heard that before, and you just kind of went off on that a little bit. I think Bill's got a question here.
Yeah, this is for David. David, a quick question, if I may. As you said, you and Mike Vaughn are diametrically opposed on a few things, and there's some new golf ball rules coming out. So a three-part question. Is TaylorMade currently working on the new tour ball? Will there be tour ball and consumer balls? And do you think this will have any negligible effect on the game at the elite level?
Thanks, Bill. Yes, we are working on a new tour ball. Need to, because the rule will be enforced 2028. Still to be defined at what level, but at the professional level, 2030 for everybody else. Yes, there will be a period of time where two balls will coexist, right? Because you have that 2-year, 24-month window, which creates a lot of confusion, I think, for a lot of us. And the third answer is, I do think, yes, we already have technical solutions, so this is a perfect example of environmental leadership and innovation. We were very public in our position in opposition of a rollback in golf ball because we thought that it would make the game, quite frankly, a little bit more difficult. And as teachers, I think we're trying to help the game be a little bit easier for our players through instruction or through equipment or through golf ball. And even to this day, I've been in this industry for over 30 years. I've been a golfer like you all have since the day I was born. And I have yet to come off 18 green with any foursome that I've played in any corner of this world and anybody say to me, you know what, I'm done playing golf because this is just way too easy. If you guys have found somebody like that, let me know. So that's why we do not believe rollbacks and innovation, especially as an innovative company, make any sense. We think the rules are in place, the regulatory commissions are in place, the standards are in place, and we can work within those. So we're setting a tone now where this decision and potentially others in the future could create essentially rollback technologies over time, which we think would actually hinder the game of golf, not help it. That being said, we have always played by the rules of golf. That's what TaylorMade does. And my comments on Golf Channel a year ago were, while we are diametrically opposed to the way the USGA is thinking about it, while we have had a seat at the table, while we have used every data source and every white paper to try to articulate our position relative to why we think this is not the best idea, not in the best interest of golf or golfers, the rule has been made. We will follow the rules, and our innovation and technology and creative nature within our culture will find a pathway to help golfers improve even beyond this rule change. What I can tell you right now, when we launch a golf ball on tour in 2028 and 2030 to the world, we're not giving back any distance. We're not giving it back because we've already found a pathway to advance it even under the new standard. And that's what great companies do when they lean in to find a pathway when someone says, you can't do something. And when you think about this with your student, if your student says to you, I can't do something, our jobs, your job, is to find them a way where they can. And that's how we think, right? Performance-driven, result-oriented, solution bias. And so we tackled it that way. So I think it's an incredible question and a very appropriate question given where we are in golf right now. So yes, we'll have a new ball. Yes, two balls will coexist for a period of time. I think ultimately we'll refine that to create simplicity instead of confusion. And yes, we have a pathway to help golfers perform better at every skill level, at every ball speed, with every launch condition moving forward. And I'm excited about that because that'll further advance, I think, the things that we do through the eyes of those that play our products.
So I'm going to have Coach Turner and then you, David, give kind of some final remarks. Anything you'd like to kind of close with?
Yeah, my final remarks, because I've obviously spent the last, I'm retired now, but 45 years, and one of the things I'm most proud of is through all those years helping guys get better, help them become good players, help them understand how to play the game. And I think of, going out and trying to learn how to play golf and getting to play more golf. You can do so much in teaching a guy how to hit the ball, all the different things. But I think teaching young kids, teaching guys who haven't played a lot, how to play the game, how to get out on the course and manage the game and play it is probably the hardest thing for players. And everyone goes and says, well, I hit it good on the range and I got out here. To me, it's not about the hitting because it's the mental part of it. I think of the quarterbacks, coaching quarterbacks, how to play the game, what is successful, what is important, how do you go about and play the game. They do these they do these quarterback workouts in the off season where he completed 72 out of 80 against air. He got his arm, he threw it 70 yards. He did none of that matters. When I go evaluate a quarterback, you put the tape on, and how does he play? How does he play the game? And that's to me the beauty of golf. Just every hole brings a new challenge, and every hole, you've got to have an approach. What do I want to do? I get on the tee. What do I want to do in this hole? You know what I'm talking about. But that I think I'm probably wrong. I think it's underemphasized. I know it is with the quarterback position. All these guys, they get in there and I can throw this ball. I can fit this ball in there. No. Play the game, throw it to the back, get 4 yards, let's keep moving the ball down the field type mentality.
Well said, Coach. Well, first of all, I grew up playing the game in central Connecticut, in a town called Glastonbury, Connecticut, which at the time had more horses than people. I played at a club called Glastonbury Hills Country Club. The head professional there and teaching professional, same role at the time, ironically was a guy named Donald Ross. Not the Donald Ross, the golf architect, but his name was Donald Ross. And he inspired me to play this game. I watched him hit balls, I listened to him interact with members, I saw him teach students, and I saw how he carried himself. And from that day forward, and I was 8 or 9 years old at the time, I have revered golf professionals throughout my entire career and do to this day. What you do to change the landscape of this sport, to engage golfers, to help them get better, is one of the most honorable and selfless things that I have ever seen in my professional life. I caught up with my friend Jamie Mulligan in the back when I came in, and to know that this event started, Jamie, with about 12 golf professionals, and here we are, Shawn, now at this beautiful resort, the Grand Del Mar, with 300 golf professionals and shop managers and leaders in the game of golf in this room is incredibly inspirational. And so I first want to start and close by saying thank you. Thank you for inspiring me the way Donald Ross inspired me. Thanks for having me. To have a chance to engage with you and learn from you and speak with you is something that I value greatly. The only takeaway or leave that I would walk off with And I go back to the notion of mentorship. Perhaps the greatest point of mentorship is when my mentor said to me, decide to. And I was asking a question about how I can improve or how I can become a great leader or how I can become a better executive or how I can lead a company like TaylorMade at some point in time. That would be my dream. And his answer was decide to. 2 words, decide to or commit to, whichever words you want to use. What you're capable of doing and what your students are capable of doing, quite frankly, have no boundaries, but they're only limited by the expectations you set or the expectations that they set. And if you decide to, your student has a better chance of deciding to as well. And I live by that. You lean in, you make the commitment, you move forward. And then from there, good things and great things happen. So thank you for having me today. It means the world to me, and thank you for doing what you do for the game of golf.
Thank you. The last football goes to my first assistant, Desmond Maisel. He just got back into the PGA program when I showed up at Sharon Heights. I'm not 100% sure he had his visions 100% on being a PGA member, and he's stepped up, and he's an incredible golf professional, and this football's for you, Desmond. Thank you. Thank you.